Over 2,700 years ago, one of the 12 tribes of Israel vanished so completely from biblical records that even the book of Revelation refuses to name them. But what if they did not vanish at all? What if they walked across half the ancient world and hid their identity inside the bloodlines of modern Europe? The historical record of the Danites breaks abruptly in the early Iron Age. After the events described in Judges chapter 18, traditionally dated to around 1100 BCE, the tribe's distinct narrative voice falls silent. Unlike the southern tribes of Judah and Benjamin, whose post-exilic reconstructions are detailed in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, Dan exits the Hebrew Bible without a farewell text. Following the Assyrian campaigns of 722 BCE, no confirmed archaeological footprint remains of the tribe in its Levantine homeland. This biblical silence deepens in later theological works. In the New Testament, the book of Revelation, chapter 7, verses 4 through 8, lists the sealed tribes of Israel but leaves Dan out entirely, substituting Manasseh. This sudden omission turns a missing tribe into a major historical puzzle. Yet, historical memory of the tribe persisted. Writing around 93 CE, the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus recorded in his Antiquities of the Jews that the Danites had migrated northward, fleeing Canaanite pressure to capture the city of Laish, which they renamed Dan. Josephus's account preserves this northern relocation, but the physical trail ends at the base of Mount Hermon. Beyond this point, ancient records offer no explanation for where the tribe went, leaving an unresolved void in the history of the ancient Near East. A proposed geographical corridor stretching over 2,000 miles from the Black Sea to the North Sea presents a series of phonetic markers. This trail is defined by a chain of major European watercourses and territories: the Danube, the Dniester, the Dnieper, the ancient region of Dacia, and ultimately Denmark. Chronologically, this pathway corresponds with the period following the Assyrian conquests of 722 BCE, which scattered the northern 10 tribes of Israel. Within several decades of this displacement, around 700 BCE, nomadic groups often identified as Scythians occupied the grasslands north of the Black Sea. Writing around 440 BCE in his histories, the Greek historian Herodotus documented these northern populations, noting their nomadic mobility and uncertain origins. While Herodotus recorded that circumcision was practiced by Middle Eastern peoples such as the Phoenicians and Syrians of Palestine. Rather than the Scythians themselves, the presence of Eastern cultural trade on the Pontic steppe has kept the migration theory open. Yet, mainstream historical linguistics offers a different explanation for each of these names. Philologists trace the river names Danube, Dniester, and Dnieper to the Proto-Indo-European root Danu, which simply means river or fluid. Similarly, Denmark's name is explained through local Germanic roots, combining Danir, a local tribal name, with Mark, meaning borderland. These competing etymologies make the proposed geographical trail highly contested. Rather than a clear path left by a single migrating tribe, the corridor remains a suggestive pattern of phonetic matches, where individual links are constantly challenged by mainstream science. Modern population genetics provides a biological layer to this historical investigation. At the center of the genetic inquiry is Y chromosome haplogroup JM267, commonly known as J1. Highly concentrated in the Near East and the Levant, this paternal marker serves as a primary biological tracer for Semitic ancestry. While J1 is exceptionally rare across Northern Europe, researchers have documented anomalous pockets of the marker along the Atlantic fringe, notably in Basque, Irish, and Scandinavian male populations. A controversial 2004 study published in the American Journal of Human Genetics first drew attention to these Western anomalies, reporting that between 4 and 6% of men in the northern Irish counties of Donegal and Antrim carry this Semitic paternal lineage. Further complicating the genetic map, a 2010 study from the University of Leeds, alongside research in PLOS biology, asserted that ancient Middle Eastern farmer ancestry accounts for a substantial portion of the British paternal gene pool, tracing back to migrations around 5000 BCE. ancient DNA discoveries add physical depth to these findings, revealing sporadic instances of J1 carriers interred in Bronze Age Irish burials and elite Scandinavian Iron Age graves containing imported Mediterranean goods. Yet, population geneticists emphasize the technical limits of Y-DNA. While these studies track ancient paternal lineages over millennia, they cannot prove a specific first millennium BCE tribal identity. The deep timeline of genetic mutations makes it impossible to isolate members of the tribe of Dan from other ancient Levantine populations. The trace presence of J1 in northwestern Europe remains open to multiple historical explanations, including early Neolithic agricultural expansions, Phoenician maritime trade, active between 800 and 600 BCE, or the subsequent migrations of the medieval Jewish diaspora. Genetics confirms that Levantine paternal lines reached the northernmost edges of Europe, but whether they arrived as part of a lost biblical migration remains an open scientific debate. Scriptural accounts place the tribe of Dan in close cooperation with the ancient world's greatest seafarers. 1 Kings chapter 5 describes Hiram of Tyre sending a master craftsman of Danite maternal descent to help build Solomon's temple, establishing a direct link between Dan and the Phoenician maritime network. By 800 BCE, Phoenician ships had bypassed the Strait of Gibraltar to establish a major trading colony at Cadiz, Spain. From this Atlantic outpost, Levantine traders sought Cornwall's rich tin deposits. While a 3,000-year-old metal hoard found at St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall represents local British craftsmanship rather than a Phoenician settlement, it confirms that this coast was connected to prehistoric European trade routes. This maritime bridge corresponds with timelines found in medieval Irish mythology. The Lebor Gabála Érenn, or the Book of Invasions, records the arrival of a highly advanced group called the Tuatha De Danann, or the People of Dan. According to these traditional texts, they landed on the Irish coast, possessing remarkable skills in metallurgy, navigation, and astronomy. While modern scholars view these accounts as a symbolic blend of pagan myth and Christian scribal tradition, rather than literal history, the parallel between these legendary skills and the real-world capabilities of ancient Levantine navigators remains an active area of historical study. According to early rabbinic interpretations of Numbers 2 verse 25, the northern standard of the camp of Dan bore the emblem of an eagle. In his 2002 book, The Tribes, researcher Yair Davidi argued that this predatory symbol left a geographic trail, showing up in the heraldry of cultures along the theorized northern migration route. The motif appears in the Roman imperial eagle, the double-headed eagle of Byzantium, and the German imperial eagle. Proponents of the migration theory suggest these symbols appeared abruptly in Central and Northern Europe without clear local origins. However, heraldic historians urge caution. They argue that the eagle is a universal symbol of power, and its widespread adoption across European empires reflects independent political styling, rather than the genetic or cultural transmission of a lost Levantine tribe. In genetics, a single lineage can expand exponentially over millennia. A 1997 study in the journal Nature on the Kohanim priestly line demonstrated how one Semitic paternal founder could leave millions of modern descendants. This biological scaling, combined with David Reich's framework in his 2018 book Who We Are and How We Got Here, which establishes that massive ancient migrations were historically routine rather than exceptional, provides a template for evaluating the Danite hypothesis. No single artifact, DNA marker, or medieval manuscript offers definitive proof. Instead, the case relies on triangulation. By weighing the subtle Semitic DNA signals along the Atlantic fringe, the disputed Dan root place names, the legendary Tuatha De Danann, Levantine maritime trade, and persistent heraldic symbols under a unified standard of evidence, the picture becomes highly suggestive. Rather than proving an absolute certainty, this convergence invites a serious historical reappraisal. It raises the distinct possibility that millions of people in modern Ireland, Denmark, and Northern Europe carry the genetic and cultural legacy of a tribe the Bible stopped naming over 2,700 years ago. Today, genetic and linguistic mapping continue to blur the boundaries between ancient myth and modern ancestry. The question is no longer just historical, but deeply personal. Who we are is rarely as simple as the borders we draw today. Share your perspective in the comments below.